Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a little bit of a chatty discussion video about the comments that the director Scorsese recently made about the Marvel movies and how I actually think that there's a lot of similarities to his remarks and some of the ways that we talk about books. For those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about, the director Scorsese, who I would say is known for making more serious movies, making dramas, those kinds of things, he made some remarks that a lot of people have had their feathers ruffled about, and I'll read those remarks to you so that way you're filled in. So to start, he says, "I don't see them," in reference to the Marvel movies. "I tried, but that's not cinema. Honestly, the closest I can think of them, as well made as they are, with actors doing the best they can under the circumstances, is theme parks. It isn't the cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences to another human being. Theaters have become amusement parks. That is all fine and good, but don't invade everything else in that sense. That is fine and good for those who enjoy that type of film, and, by the way, knowing what goes into them now, I admire what they do. It's not my kind of thing. It simply is not. It's creating another kind of audience that thinks cinema is that. It's not cinema, it's something else. We shouldn't be invaded by it. We need cinemas to step up and show films that are narrative films." I'll actually kind of start off by giving my opinion on all of these things. I know a lot of people are pretty upset by what he said, and there are certain things he says that don't really bother me at all. And at the end of the day, none of it really gets to me that much because nothing he said changes my opinions and nothing he says changes my life. So if I want to go see a Marvel movie, I'm still going to go see it. But some of the things that I think he's said are things that could have been worded a little bit differently. And then I think that the reaction would have been also very different, even though the root of what he's saying would still be kind of the same. So the idea that, we don't need to be invaded by it. So if he personally feels that, hey, these movies aren't really for me, I would like to see more of these other kinds of films, I can't see why anybody would find really too many issues with that kind of a statement. At the end of the day, he's still saying a similar thing. He's admitting that something's not really for him, but then he is saying what he personally would like more of. And instead of doing that, he does something that I see all the time, not just with movies, but with pretty much any kind of art form, which is that he's holding certain kinds of, in this case, movies above other kinds of movies. I also find that he's a little bit insulting the people that like these kinds of movies. That probably wasn't his intention, but when he says it's creating another kind of audience that thinks cinema is that, I guess I don't really understand why cinema has to be defined by a certain genre of movies or why it needs to be whatever he thinks it is. If the audience, the majority of people think that cinema is a certain thing, they're allowed to think that. That doesn't mean, when I think cinema, I just think movies, and maybe I'm really ignorant and movie critics can explain to me what cinema actually is, but I just think that movies are a place that you go to when you want to indulge in a story, when you want to kind of take the time to see something either spectacular or gripping or emotional, whatever the case may be. And I don't really see how distinguishing one from the other and then just kind of defining cinema as that, I feel like that's a little limiting. The comparison that he makes to the Marvel movies and movie theaters in general kind of turning into theme parks is, part of me is like, I love theme parks, and I don't disagree that the Marvel movies, that kind of is what they are in a lot of ways. They're really fun. They're action-packed, they're bright, they're colorful, they're vibrant, and I would say that even in how the emotions of the characters and the triumphant moments and everything, I would say all of that is very full. I don't know, my personal opinion, that I find them to be incredibly nuanced. I don't think I've ever shed a tear, not to say that other people haven't, but I just don't find myself that emotionally gripped by the Marvel movies, but I'm definitely entertained and I have a good time. And I get that at theme parks, I'm not going to be crying at a theme park. I'm probably just going to be having a good time. As a side note, and this is a very cynical part of my brain, I don't know, things like this, they always a little bit scream to me as like a marketing tactic, because apparently he has a new movie coming out, and I didn't know he had a new one coming out, but I do now. And for people that don't care for the Marvel movies or who agree with him, or people that like to kind of sit on their high horse and think themselves fancy because the movies they like are a little less colorful and action-packed, I find that those kinds of people, they're going to really connect to what he's saying, and then they're going to want to watch his movies. And he's basically pulling at, I find, the audience that he wants to watch his film, the kind of audience that is likely to enjoy his films. Those are the kinds of people he's appealing to right now with these sorts of comments. So I don't know. That's probably not accurate whatsoever, but just a little cynical part of me is like, did you just say these things to get attention? Now kind of relating all of this to books. So comics obviously are the inspiration for the Marvel movies. And while I'm not going to specifically be talking about comics, I definitely think that they're going to fit into the conversation. So it's funny to me that a lot of the uproar I've seen in response to Scorsese's comments come from the same people that make almost identical kinds of comments about young adult fiction. I'm going to tweak one of Scorsese's sentences so that it is more applicable to books, and it's the kind almost identical to the things I see people saying about young adult fiction, and not just young adult fiction, but the kinds of things I see people saying about comics, or the kinds of things I see people saying about genre fiction in general. So the sentence, "They aren't the stories of human beings trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences to another human being." I would say any genre fiction snob, anybody that's ever basically emptied their bowels on genre fiction of any kind, that's exactly the kind of sentence I see. Anybody that thinks adult fantasy, adult science fiction is leagues better than young adult science fiction fantasy, those kinds of people, well, they're not kinds of people, but the people that are saying those things, they say things like this. And I just can't help but see the parallel and find it so funny, because I have seen people that talk about how young adult books are they're just fun, you know, they're just indulgent, they're just guilty pleasure escapism. I've seen people who say things like that who are currently outraged about the things that Scorsese is saying. And I'm like, when are we all gonna realize that why be snobs? I guess I don't understand. Why at any point be snobby about what other people like? I actually had one of you recently send me a Reddit article of somebody making this really long comparison about people liking young adult books and how they're essentially people who eat baby food, and then comparing that to the people who like adult fiction and how those people are like chefs. And you can tell a chef all you want that you really get fulfillment and enjoyment out of your baby food, but that chef at the end of the day is just going to laugh at you. And I see things like that, and then in my head I'm like, okay, this person is very far up their own butt. I then see tons of people agreeing with it and saying, great analogy, you're so right. And so I personally think I don't ever find anybody looks smarter or superior when they make these kinds of comments. Never. I never think like, you're absolutely right, you're an intellectual, and all the people that like the things that you're talking about, they're stupid. Maybe it's because I'm one of those stupid people. I don't know. Personally, I don't really get it. Now, I will say, again, nothing that Scorsese said surprised me. And I'm not advocating for us to make assumptions about people or anything, but the comedian Bill Burr has this amazing line in one of his specials that's something along the lines of, "What did you think that guy thought?" And I kind of feel that way about this whole situation. I mean, given the kinds of movies that Scorsese makes, I'm like, yeah, I mean, he's allowed to think that the Marvel movies aren't that good as far as in comparison to the kinds of films that he likes to make. And I think it's totally reasonable that if he likes to make those kinds of movies, he's also going to wish that there were other directors making those kinds of movies. I don't see any issue with him feeling those things. I think it's completely fine that people have their preferences. And I think if you personally don't find enjoyment or fulfillment, or you don't find you're gaining any empathy for other human beings by reading certain things, or you you don't get anything out of certain forms of art. You can just like what you like and you can have your reasons. But maybe acknowledge that people get different things out of all forms of art, because shocking news here, it's subjective. I know that if there are people out there that are like, wait, but Scorsese's movies are better, which is fine. I don't care if you think they're better. But if you're like, and also you have to think so too. It's like, no, I can like what I like. Other people can like what they like. And I am aware that in saying that, I'm not going to change anybody's mind. I'm not going to convince the people who are already up on their high horse. They're not going to have their minds changed just because I was like, but it'd be nicer if you just didn't shame people, you know? Anyway, definitely let me know your thoughts on all of this, whether it's about Scorsese's comments or the parallels that I was kind of making, or the Marvel movies, whatever you want. I'm happy to chat. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later.